Today's episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and join the conversation at thehippocratic-collective.com. Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to remind you that Creating Space, my coaching course and retreat, is open for registration and enrollment now. I am so excited that folks are signing up for spending 6 months with me online and then 4 days with me in person at a spa retreat later on this year. And I want you to be in there. So head to joanchanmd.com/space and book a call with me. You get to chat with me by phone, learn if this program is right for you. So head to joanchanmd.com/space. I can't wait to talk to you and invite you into Creating Space. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. I am super excited to get to know two healthcare humans today who are sitting in the same room, not as me, but as each other's, which that's a fun arrangement that I don't usually get. I love when the network of healthcare humans through the podcast expands and brings different kinds of healthcare humans to my door. And this particular duo, I'm particularly excited to get into. We already had a whole pre-chat about time and tea, and I already have follow-up questions, so we got to get into it. Melissa and Tara, would you please introduce yourselves?
Okay. So I'm Tara, and we're two bodies with a little bit of a shared mind, but we are two separate people. So I'm an occupational therapist and with a pretty diverse background, doing a lot of different roles from pediatric to brain injury, motor vehicle collision recovery. And then in the past, for the past 7 years, I was working at the University of Guelph supporting university students as an accessibility advisor, so helping them get accommodations. And so that's where I met Melissa, and I'll let you go and we can how that combined.
Great. I'm Melissa Beacom. I'm also an occupational therapist. I came to healthcare kind of in a very interesting route. I did an undergrad in history, as one does as they go into OT. I just did work with adults with disabilities and truly enjoyed the work that I was doing and became interested in OT through that. Did a second degree in OT and through volunteer work that I had done at the university got really interested in the accessibility work. So I worked in at Homewood for a while, which is a mental health facility, and then decided to really work at the university as an accessibility advisor, and I did that work for about 23 years while I also had two babies and who are now adults. And really loved that work. And then Tara and I I think it was during COVID.
2019 maybe, yeah.
When we decided that, what we used to be able to do and what we can do now has really changed, and it wasn't feeding us in the same way. And I was really concerned about what we were doing for students was reducing. And so we just didn't have the capacity as accessibility advisors anymore to do some of the more work that was really meaningful in creating shifts and meaningful shifts for students. So we decided to look up some funding and went for it and got a grant to do a special, a group that we designed together using research and what we knew as OTs what helps students look at that more the hidden curriculum, the things that work and school demand of us that are hidden, so that a lot of that emotional kind of work where the imposter syndrome comes from, where the anxiety interferes with the ability to move forward, all those kinds of things. And we were looking at what helps to get through that in ways that allow us to do the important work that we want to be able to do.
Yeah. So that was our passion project. It was like became the work of our career. It just was so fulfilling, and we were able to research it. We got a rep to be able to research, and that was really fun process for us to learn. And and so we were able to see some shifts in perfectionism, in management of stress, and how much students were avoiding work, and understanding, like, instead of just thinking about like, okay, you just need to be more organized or more motivated to
Well,
understand.
if I could just use this calendar better, I'd be okay.
Which app do I use that will like
Yeah. But instead, like, why is it scary? What's scary about doing this task? Or, why is it hard to get started? And then we realized a lot of the students in this group have ADHD. So, and we have ADHD. So we related to them. And so we thought, what if we did a couple groups just for students managing ADHD?
And to create that community, because what we were finding in the research that we were doing also was that it's, and we all know this, no matter what I say, that other people are having those same thoughts. It's when you hear it from others and you go, oh, I'm not the only one having these thoughts, and how shame just kind of starts to decrease, in hearing those stories, saying, I hear myself there. It was really the thing that created the shift for people. Yeah. Creating that space, the opportunity for those conversations. Yeah.
So, and then we decided to, unfortunately, the program wasn't able to be funded long-term because it was a short-term funding.
Yeah.
And so we decided we couldn't stop doing the work.
We did it for 2 years at the university.
So we did it for 2 years. It was really wonderful 2 years. And then we decided to take the leap into private practice. So we now run Mint Occupational Therapy, supporting students and professionals and parents managing ADHD.
As well as people managing anxiety,
and
those kinds of things.
Not
things that get in the way of being able to do the roles and jobs that we want to be able to do as humans. Yeah.
Wow. And so now do you still run them in like a group setting, or is it like a variety of ways that you help people?
So we do some groups and are actually probably doing more in the future. That's our goal, is to be able to do more groups. They'll be different than the ones we ran at the university for sure. We'd love to run one for parents with ADHD who are helping with their kids. And
talk about executive function demands.
For sure. Overwhelming.
Like CEO, CEO of your household kind of stuff.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of work with grad students. But right now, a lot of the work is individual. Although we have run a workshop on emotions at work, like not schoolwork or anything like that, just at work, and how to manage some of those emotions that come up and interfere in really tricky ways. And just to be more aware of them and have some strategies to deal with them.
Yeah, I totally understand why you guys reached out, because I feel like it, obviously we're saying it from different lenses and different backgrounds and training, but like as soon as you said hidden curriculum, I'm like, yes, these are my people. So like all about, what are the inhuman stories? Like what are the underlying shoulds and assumptions and expectations that we have for ourselves that we didn't invent, that were given to us collectively? I would love to hear a bit more about that piece. Like obviously I'm sure there's numerous ones, but if there's a couple that you notice are quite common that come up for students, for professionals, even for yourselves, like what are sort of some common stories and curricula that seem to really inhibit people from doing the work they want to do?
One, if I share with you, like sometimes I find for myself, but I also see this trend in a lot of people, like when it gets hard, it starts to become an internal story as opposed to it's supposed to be hard. It's not because I'm not smart enough. It's not because I don't have the skills. So that self-doubt starts to interfere with the work, and it gets sneaky in the head and starts to have you questioning skills that you actually do in your heart know you have. But I think that a lot of that can come, especially for people with ADHD, from, we often look to the things that we've been criticized for, or like been told, if you just live to your potential, you have so much potential, why can't you make it happen? So I think some of it comes from that story. But I think it happens for almost all humans.
Yeah. And I think, the education system, our cultural system, creates a lot of shoulds and a lot of harm in terms of, in a few ways. Like one is we from a very young age, we teach kids to tune into the grade, to like the external outcome, you know, as opposed to it being about a process of learning and growing and making mistakes and figuring it out and being a beginner. It's about like proving your worth, and your worth gets totally tied up in your grade and your performance. And so it builds this pressure, and it also becomes addictive. I work with a lot of clients that like they hustled to get those 90s so they'd feel good about themselves. And so then when it gets hard, it's like, this is my whole concept, is being smart. This is my whole self-concept, and now that's being threatened, you know. And on the other hand, the student that struggled has then developed often the narrative of, I'm not smart enough. And then it's this hustle to prove that they are to themselves, to others. And so it becomes very performative and about this external outcome that we often don't have control over. And it just adds to this, it just turns the temperature up on the stress, on the pressure to perform. Right. Because it's not about learning and growth. It's about proving.
Performance. Yeah. And proving that I'm okay, that I'm worthy, that I'm enough.
Yeah.
And that translates into the working world.
I think, and I think it's often hard for the people that have done really, really well in school too, and are used to getting the gold star. Mm-hmm. And then there's no gold star. There's just like a pile of work that keeps building, and, you know, clients that aren't getting better, and, you know, all the pressures there, but you've lost that satisfaction of like,
and the measure.
This quantitative measure of your worth,
of how good you are.
Yeah, totally. And so I thought you had proposed, and I think a great focus of our conversation could be those with ADHD or even ADHD tendencies in healthcare. I will say I have no diagnosis of ADHD, but I relate to some of the struggles. So and I'm good with that being where my journey is at this point. Yeah. But what you're saying about the like addiction to feeling smart, like as if smart is a feeling. I don't think it's on the emotion wheel, and yet we seem to feel it. Yeah. And the addiction to getting those gold stars, like, and so as a family physician, certainly I am not like there's some awards I guess you can be nominated for, and that's really nifty when you get them, but it's not in that like the immediate hit each day based on the work you do. In fact, the report cards you get often, whether they mean to or not, like they're based on patient outcomes, right? Like there's a practice report that I get, I forget if it's every month or every 3 months, but it says like what percentage of my patients have like their diabetes managed or not. Oh, the most recent one told me like how many times I prescribed antibiotics and compared me to the rest of my peers. And told me like what percentile I'm in of how frequently, and I'll just say like it's the only time that 90% is a failing grade. So I was a higher percent. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like 90% of like apparently I am a much higher antibiotic prescription person than all of these peers of mine, and like the shame trigger was intense. Oh my gosh. And I do this work a lot. Like I have done my therapy work, I've done my coach work, but I like did a little spin and I had to check with my colleagues what their scores were. And like it was really like that old report card story.
Totally. Yeah.
So I would love to hear more what you guys think about that.
Well, I mean, I think it is so human nature to compare ourselves. That is like the most basic human impulse is like, am I fitting into the group? Right?
Yeah, doing well.
Am I like, because I don't want to get kicked out. That's like our basic need is to belong, is to fit into the group. And so, so anytime that there's this like something's thrown up that's going to say you're not good enough, you're not measuring up, shame's going to be the first emotion that's there, right? Because shame is the fear of not being enough, not being good enough, not belonging in the group. So, so it's kind of set up to make you feel crappy, really. And our groups have gotten so much bigger. So also the comparison size is bigger. So I think in general, we're facing this challenge all the time of, I think that's part of the challenge with social media. It's just that there's just all this in-your-face comparison that happens.
But I think also these metrics that are used, and I imagine that was chosen to help, to make sure there's not over-prescribing. Like it was come from, but all the unintentional impact of some of these things. And that I think we're also bombarded by a whole bunch of metrics. Yeah. And that makes me think about, ADHD and healthcare. And, I know for me, a lot of the struggle came with the executive functioning doing pieces of the work, like being able to finish notes and in a timely manner and those kinds of things. And I always, it becomes like, it's almost like we choose the measure, or our nervous system maybe alerts us to the measure that is the most scary, right? And puts us into that fight or flight response. And so I may be doing excellent work with my clients. But then there's this really harsh self-judgment that can happen because look at my notes just aren't what they need to be. I'm struggling to, get them done in a timely way. My college reminds me of all these things, the alert system gets activated, and then I can start to see myself as a lesser than kind of therapist just because of that one piece.
Yeah. And I'm curious, are any of the metrics that you're getting about like the quality of client care, client interaction, or their perception of whether they feel cared for or supported,
right?
Or is it just?
I know we have like our family health team runs like a patient survey, and that I think that's once a year, and I actually find that's one of the more beneficial ones because some of the metrics I find more helpful than others, but especially like I just love when there's comments, even if the comment is I can never get through on the phone. Oh my God, that's a really helpful comment. And then we can check on, like, there's ones, if someone was like, she's a B word, okay, we can just delete that. But like I've never gotten that as a comment, right? Like it's usually either things that actually speak to the quality of the relationship or the quality of the care, or feedback that's helpful. But I would say really when you look at like what ends up being QI, like quality improvement projects, what you get the metrics for, like say billing wise and things from the ministry, it's things that they can measure. And those just, in my view, aren't really the meat of what we do, right? Like the quality of the care. And also a lot of, especially in primary care, and I would say in mental health as well, like a lot of what you offer, you can't, it's hard to prove the negative of like, you don't know how many more of these people would have ended up in hospital or something. Like that's a bit trickier to prove, especially since it's the long game. And if you've intervened at a point where they don't enter the system at as higher, right? So I don't envy the researchers who are like trying to figure out how to measure it, but it's hard then when it's just like, here's your quality practice report and this is like the measurement of your quality, and you're like, now I'm having a shame trigger, which that's mine to deal with. But I am curious, like, is this actually even doing what's intended? Like, is this actually hitting the mark for anybody?
And that's one of the things that in doing the work that we do has helped me to tune in, and just be a really good pause, observe, be mindful, like here's that shame coming over. I can be mindful that it's there as opposed to just reacting, and it can be so, and sometimes you do get pulled into response and react. Of course, I'm human. But then having the learning that we've been able to do, to be able to step back and notice, oh, this is where it's coming from. It's coming from those old messages, or this is coming from that experience, or, oh yeah, they're measuring these things, but here's what I value. And I know this is what also my clients value. So it's kind of that way of restoring health in that really unhealthy kind of scenario.
And a couple things come to mind. Like one is, Brene Brown's work on shame resilience would say, like, we're all going to feel shame. So the people that are resilient through their shame are able to name it, like to say, this is like, I'm feeling ashamed of this. And either introduce probably both self-compassion, of how can I this is hard, this feels hard right now, and can you speak to someone a safe person that can validate, go to your other doctors and go, what was your scores, like, how are you feeling, and that is like the thing that can help instead of, because the tendency is like hide, right? Like, I don't want to tell anybody about this, I feel really ashamed of it. That's some of the things. And then I also think of so a lot of the work we do is from acceptance commitment therapy is some of our training. It really resonates. I think it's really aligned with occupational therapy. And so the thinking there would be, okay, so I'm having the thought that I didn't meet this metric, whatever the thing is. Do I want that to guide my actions? Is there anything helpful to learn from this? Okay, maybe I will consider, am I overprescribing this?
Yeah.
Or no, I feel like, to have that kind of thought and then to make space to feel that way, but to decide, do I want this to change my practice in any way or not? Do I want that to just be there?
Oh, yeah. Like I'll, just to like round out sort of what happened with that example, it was interesting because so for me in the past, like when I would feel ashamed like that, like I would have like shredded that report. I would have tried not to talk about it with anyone. If someone else like brought it up, I'd be like, oh yeah, me too. And whatever their number was, like I probably just like lie about my number, like because that was a common. I still have a tendency to want to lie instead of sharing because I'm afraid of the judgment of others. And so instead, actually like getting curious about it. Feeling the feelings, getting curious, asking my colleagues from a place of connection and realizing some of them had similar numbers, some of them had lower numbers, even noticing that some that had like lower, aka better according to this metric, numbers were having similar or higher shame trigger than me.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Because it's not about the number, it's about like the story and what it means and like, where's the other 1%, like we would get in school.
Because you've been hustling for numbers your whole life.
Yes, you're like, it has to be.
I gotta be the best at this.
Above. Like once I got 107% on a chemistry test. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I have to get, so that's my new standard now apparently, which is like, that's nonsense, right? Like how can that be your new standard?
But it gives you this beautiful like rush,
Yes. Oh my gosh, more than perfect.
So it feels so good.
Please.
Thank you for validating.
Nailing it.
Yes, absolutely. And then the really interesting thing was then beyond that, like really looking at the numbers and realizing like that the, absolute numbers, there was differences for sure, but it wasn't like, I don't know, thousands more prescriptions one way or another, like that actually most people were sort of within a range that seemed kind of like, oh, maybe we're actually all we could all shift the range down, but it wasn't like a huge spread. And so you could see that if you had, I don't know, 20 or 50 more prescriptions, that would significantly potentially shift your percentage, which again wasn't like, but I was just like, oh, okay, that number maybe means a bit more to me. I can be more mindful and get more curious. And honestly, now I certainly like when I write a prescription, I'm like, there we go, another one for the percent. Like I still, honestly, like it's still a little bit in there. It's not, but there it is. Hello, there's a thought. But what do I want to do? I will pause and be like, well, is this unnecessary? But I just think that for whatever it's my patient population or the way I practice, mostly if I thought it initially, I'm still saying yes. And what are you going to do? I'm not.
Check, you've made assessment. Yeah.
So it's like, it lets you be mindful though.
I do really love that idea though of like sometimes we think that being compassionate toward ourselves, in those moments, like is actually going to allow us to make more mistakes or, deny. But the opposite is true. The research is just so strong. We've done a lot of reading with Kristen Neff's work around self-compassion. And it plays itself out exactly as you had said, when I provide myself with care and compassion, like, oh, this is hard, this kind of sucks. It allows us to look with clear eyes and to respond through the situation as opposed to through my emotion. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, and I think we're more likely to be defensive when we don't have self-compassion either, because it's like it's too scary to admit that you've made a mistake because you're going to receive it with such harsh judgment that it's safer to be like to deflect, right? Oh, that's bad. That's not my fault. That's someone else's fault. That shouldn't have been put on my plate. Whatever the thing is, it's just safer when we know we're going to be received harshly. And then I think the other thing is in healthcare. I think it's really problematic how we've been set up to be the expert in all things.
Hello.
I think, especially for physicians, but I think for many of us, like I had such, when I first, was a new OT practicing, it was such pressure to I felt like such a fraud. People are expecting me to be an expert on this and I'm still learning,
I still have those feelings.
Yeah.
Of course, after 25 years of practicing, 30, I don't even know how many, lots of years of practicing, I still have those doubts, which I now can recognize just makes me a good OT. I'm thinking about it. I'm responding, I'm open to it being different than what maybe the assessment says it should be or whatever, I'm being more thoughtful. That's what that thought often
But it isn't. It's the system isn't set up for that beginner's mindset, for that reflection, for the
No.
ability to be like, I don't know, or I made a mistake. It's like really,
Yes.
it's not really that safe to make mistakes and to be a
And
beginner. And
even
So
to
true.
disclose to others, it depends on your
Yeah.
Team and your environment, but
Yeah,
sometimes
which
it
makes-
doesn't feel
yeah.
safe to disclose because it's this whole competitive kind of feeling like
and
I
silence
cannot
makes shame worse.
yeah, and I cannot be vulnerable
Yeah.
in that scenario if I know I'm going to be met with judgment. And I think that is especially true for those who've had ADHD and who are in those scenarios where, you sometimes do have to scramble, to meet all the requirements. And it's something that you feel like you have to hide.
Yeah. And if what's valued in the system is efficiency, organization, like timely note keeping, all these number and many things,
Yeah.
that's like kryptonite for ADHD. So if that's what's being like highlighted and is the marker, the email's going out saying, oh, here's who hasn't done this note yet or whatever, like that's really, really challenging when that's your weakness. Yeah. And
I'm wondering, sort of speaking of the prevalence of ADHD, not to have numbers or anything, but just I've heard that, well, I've been hearing more and more about ADHD, period. The pandemic happened, everyone got on TikTok, and now suddenly, especially adults, I'd say the kid rate, if anything, has gone down or is similar, personally in my practice, but the adult rate of people being curious as an adult, do I have ADHD? Could I have always had ADHD? Has really skyrocketed, for sure. And I think there's like actually the stereotype that I was sort of given, first of all, was like a child, often male,
Boys?
interestingly, boys, disruptive boys, can't sit still, they're getting in trouble. And then those are the ones that would come in and you got to medicate them so they stop disrupting their class, not to be too harsh, but like that's like, I mean, yes. And so then you're like, well, I mean, typically would they, unless they were on medication and functioning better, like they wouldn't end up in healthcare, so there must not be that many people with ADHD in healthcare. Ha ha ha. So tell me, like, what are some of the signs that you looked for, the signs that you both said that you have ADHD, like
Correct.
What were some of those signs for yourself that you realized, like, wait, maybe I have ADHD, even though I don't fit that stereotype?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think, thanks. I think this is part of our dynamic is we both have ADHD, so we both interrupt each other and we both have to decide who gets to talk first and who's going to wait patiently. It's really good practice for us.
It's good practice.
And I create a list of the things that I really want to say, but I can't. I'm holding back.
That's such a good idea. I love taking notes.
So I think part of the issue, the reason there's so many adults coming forward is because, especially women, is because it's a different profile for girls often, right? They're usually not disruptive in the classroom. I think gender roles and gender norms and desire to people please and make your teacher happy and be a good girl, all that stuff leads to masking and to working really hard and to trying to overcome. And, often that hyperactivity comes out as talking a lot or, big ideas as opposed to running in circles around the room. And so,
or looking out the window, like big thoughts.
so I think that's part of the
thoughts.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a high percentage of entrepreneurs that have ADHD, and that's because of that divergent thinking, problem solving, creative ideas, getting excited about something and going for it. I think evolutionarily, that's why, it's probably that ADHD brain that was like, let's go and try and let's explore this other place and let's try this new way of doing something. And so I think actually, I don't know the numbers in healthcare, but I think I would expect there to be a lot because personally, I can say I chose occupational therapy because I thought, I won't get bored. I can change my population I work with. I can change what I'm doing. There's so many. I can work all ages. I can work in all contexts. And so I thought I won't get bored, right? So it's that, and it's all about creative problem solving. Every client's gonna be different. Every situation's different. It's all about this holistic.
It also lends itself well to that thinking on the spot, like being able to assess a situation, the personability often that can happen, that value the social aspect of it. I find that I looked for OT for very similar reasons. I did want the variety. I did never want to be bored. And that's actually why I ended up in mental health as well, because after doing some placements and work in other roles, I found like mental health is never boring. It's always something
That's
new,
for sure.
a problem to be solved or to look at in new ways. And I mean, I think we can take anything and make it be like that. But definitely the variety that healthcare can often provide for us, and the stimulation, and being like in the moment, needing to problem solve. I love it when my job, in fact, I'm at my best when I'm busiest.
And to making a difference and doing something that feels meaningful, and the empathizing with other people and trying to help them. So I think all those things make for a really great fit between ADHD and healthcare. And then there's the admin. So I think a lot of people are drawn to it for all those reasons, and then are facing burnout because of the heavy admin tasks.
Well, and let's also be fair.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and this is where some of my more subtle ways of ADHD showing up can start to show up, is that I'm almost always a yes person. Like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Oh, yeah, I want to be part of that. I can see this, the way we could solve this in a different way, and I get very excited by that idea.
Yep.
And so I don't make that assessment based on how much time I have. Like, why don't you do that? I make that assessment on how exciting the idea is. And I don't mean to do that always. Yeah. It's just that real pull. And I was able to make that work for a really long time because I was able to only work 4 days a week. I had summers off, and so I rejuvenated during those times. But realizing that, that's the only way that this is actually working. Yeah. Other than tying down my hand, but I did start to develop like strategies so that, before saying yes, I, would have a note for myself on my computer screen to say, pause before yes, and just say, I'm interested, but not sure I have the time. I had practiced these statements that I could
Great.
But still really super hard not to become involved in that truly meaningful way to make the work more meaningful.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Or if you see the system being broken or that it could be done in a different way, it's really hard to just sit on your hands and be like, oh, whatever, it's just a job. I'll just make it work.
Yes.
I want to change this. I can see that this could be better. Yeah.
Yes. And okay, this the idea of then say you're in the meetings on the committees, very much there. I've really had to go on like committee sobriety, and that's good for me. I have like one committee and it's good. But before I would show up, and then everyone would be defining the problems and how complex, and my brain would immediately be like having like a million fireworks going off, and like, okay, well, let's do it, let's go, and they'd be like, all right, so now we're gonna define our terms of reference. We're gonna put out a 6 months plan to study the thing that we've already studied, and then I'd want to die.
Oh my God, I've been there.
Impatience.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we never actually, like, everybody loses interest by the time the 6 months comes around.
And then the steam is gone.
And that also helped me to stop signing up because I couldn't handle the crush anymore.
No.
Right? Like, I
so crushed.
Do all of this work
to talk about it,
to then not see outcomes. I was in a lucky position for very many, many, many years to be able to create change. And so that, it was beautiful, right? Like really say, this isn't working. We'd problem solve together. We'd figure out new solutions and we'd be able to implement many of them. And so that kept me in a role for 20 odd years, being able to have that influence and be able to see, oh, look, we made it better. As those organizations get bigger, I think it gets harder to do that kind of approach. But definitely, that quick to offer.
Yep.
I think that's true of, when I'm doing client work as well, I have to stop myself from saying, I'll send you an email and I'll do this and I'll do that after. And I've really, I don't know if it's my older age or if it's the work that you and I do, but I've really been able to say, is this the best way, or would it be better for me just to send it to you, like send these links to you in this call instead, or, do that. I try and think about more of the efficiency pieces as opposed opposed to putting it on my plate later, because I think about, do you want to be doing this at 6 o'clock tonight? No, you do not. Oh. So I've been able to create that pause. And
amazing.
Yeah, me. I had years of not doing that before I made that shift.
It's a huge one. Like, so I'm wondering then, especially with the ADHD piece. So I see different things about executive functioning, time management, and how I think that some of the time management stuff that's worked well for me may have even originated from like neurodivergent communities, like time blocking type stuff, which doesn't work for everyone, but like there's some stuff that in some ways was an adaptation for folks that needed more adaptation. And then it doesn't always work for others. I'm curious what's worked for you and your clients in terms of efficiency stuff, knowing that there's also like a layer where you can get filled with shame if you're not efficient enough, and you can be like efficiency perfectionist and time perfectionist in ways that aren't realistic either. Like, how does that conversation go even within yourselves and with your clients, like the time productivity stuff?
I think the one thing, and I know you have lots of ideas, I can see them vibrating, but I think the one thing I find has been most helpful is to talk about the underlying feelings around, other people seem to be able to just do this schedule thing, and then it's important, so therefore they get it done. I've loved the work around Dr. William Dobson. I don't know if you've heard of him doing this work around an importance-based nervous system versus an interest-based nervous system, and they're saying ADHD is more of an interest-based nervous system, so no matter how much you care, that does not activate your focus. And so it can be this misnaming, of you must not care because you could do it for that, but you can't do it for this, so therefore you don't care about this. So really becoming more aware of, there might be something else at work here that's not about, that I have to activate that interest in order to be able, there's a nice acronym, of how to activate that interest-based nervous system. We can give you some resources if you're interested in the end.
Sure, yeah.
Are you going to volunteer to send another email?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I can look up William Dobson.
I don't have to do it. You're like, call me on it.
I'm going to Google it. And the weird thing is, William Dobson's like my grandfather's name. He's definitely not the person who pioneered here. But I'm like,
remember this.
It's a very memorable name.
So the idea of really just becoming aware of what are some of those undercurrents, helps with creating a system that actually fits. So rather than trying to horn myself into a system that works for my colleague, me really assessing, for me, at the end of the day, my focus is burnt. Like, I cannot seem to get things done. So, leaving myself little trails so that I can pick them up the next day really easily and I know exactly where to start. That is a strategy that tends to be more effective for me. So I leave myself like lots of great notes about what I need to put in the notes. And I have then the next day, all the memory is there. And now I just have to, and half the time I find the notes almost done. And so I get in my head, I have to make this perfect note. That perfectionism sometimes comes into play sneaky ways. And instead, if I just do the blah, it's almost done. And so if I get out of my head and help myself, and sometimes making it smaller, saying I don't have to do this big job, I can just do this small piece, can also help, leaving myself those little breadcrumbs to get started. You have some other ideas.
Yeah. Well, and I think that those are great. And I think, the other piece of it is that we tend to, because we care so much about the client work and pleasing other people, that sometimes it also means, and the admin work is boring. That we prioritize the like really good session and the really good follow up and the communicating with the whatever other people on our team, and the emails, because that's forward facing, and then the note comes at the very bottom of the pile, or whatever admin task that we don't want to do gets put off. And so often it also means like we're putting everyone else first before ourselves, because that thing that I have to get done that isn't going to affect anyone in the short term, I'll wait till last to do it. And then, like Melissa said, you end up leaving it to the time of day where you have the least capacity, the least cognitive function to do that task. So I think some of it is like setting boundaries about like, can I, pause, but like make it smaller for one thing by maybe doing some of my notes before lunch, you know, after I've seen some clients, and blocking that time for myself, protecting that time, and then, you know, doing a few more at the end, or starting my day with it, just so that it isn't like all at the end of the day, or all the very, you do it before you send the emails because you know you won't put those off, or whatever the thing is like, how can I change that priority to like do it at the time where I have the most focus, the most energy, and make it smaller.
Can I also suggest that I used to try and do that? I would block this extra time before lunch, that my colleagues were doing it, and it was working beautifully for them. But what was right before it was my drop-in time.
Yeah.
And so, of course, yes, I'll see 2 more. You know,
yeah,
they're
just blast right through it.
Yes, I'll just, and then my time was eaten up. So what my solution was to change so that it wasn't after drop-in. So really also looking at those patterns of when, like, my instinct is to do this. Like, why don't I not fight that quite so hard? So,
yes.
you know, really, so the solution is going to be individual. It's not necessarily a one size fits all, but the thinking behind it kind of is like that. What is going to create the easiest way to get into this, the, you know, more likely to get it done, all those kinds of things. And then the other strategy that I started to use was to set a timer. And it amazed me how much I could get done in 15 minutes when I was telling myself 15 minutes is nothing. You know, like really calling myself on that. Well, why don't you just try it?
Yes.
I have a time cube that I use. So whenever I'm really feeling like, you know, I don't want to be distracted by setting a timer on a phone or those kinds of things, I use this time cube. And I just say, you know what, you tell all your clients to do this, you just do it. And so, you know, set that time cube for 10, 15 minutes, whatever I feel like I can commit to, even though I'm fatigued. And it amazes me how much, like I, you know, too often I overestimate how difficult the task is going to be and underestimate my capacity to do it. And so just calling myself on a little bit of that by using that timer has really helped.
I love that. I'm curious of what you found. We were talking a bit about it before, like just human beings, neurotypical and neurodiverse, but like human ability to estimate how long things take. That's like more complicated than you think. I would love to hear both of your experience, personal and professional, about that, because I think, I mean, we're all obsessed with not having enough time for things, right? And like, I don't have the time for that, or I'm overwhelmed, I have too much to do, not enough time to do it. And there's actually, I think, lots that goes into that. But one of the things is perhaps like we're overcommitting either ourselves with their to-do list, or committing to others. Oh yeah, I'll get that done in this time frame, but like we haven't really thought through how long it will take. But kind of conversely, we may assume it will take way longer than we think it will, right? So it's like those two things can be at odds with each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, there's a few things at play. I think you're right. And on one hand, we put things off because we think they're big. Like, it's like a lot of it is managing overwhelm. Anytime it feels overwhelming, we won't do it. Because even if it's just like this, well, I don't know how to find that, or I don't know what the first step's going to be. And sometimes that's enough to put it off. And then you're like, oh my God, it actually only took 5 minutes. Or then I think, oh, I'll just hammer this out. I have all morning. And then I perfect it and spend way too long working on a thing that didn't need to take as long. So like for me, sometimes it's underestimating how long it will take. Sometimes it's working on it for longer than I need to make it really, really great. And then I put off the tasks that I'm not quite sure of. It's more, I think with ADHD, anytime there's going to be some executive functioning demands in figuring out what to do first, it's going to be the thing that you're more likely to put off, where you're like, oh, I know exactly, this is a one-step thing, I can do it, you know. But if it's multiple steps or multiple components, or it's vague, we put it off.
And I think that what you've hit on there is to find out, why am I putting this off? Like, to be aware, to tune in. Okay, I am putting this off. Like, I just need to pause and figure out, when I've figured that out, then I can help myself to do that thing, as opposed to just constantly doing other things, you know, and avoiding that task. So I have found that really helpful. Just first of all, pausing. What is it? Okay, I'm afraid of how this is going to be received. That's why I don't want to craft this email. I know I have to give bad news, or, you know, whatever it might be. I have to say no. That's my kryptonite. Okay, so how can I say no in a way that, like, I have to say it? Timeliness is good. I'm going to encourage myself to do it. I dig up that fierce self-compassion. Like, even though this is going to be hard, I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing it. You know, then when I know what's underneath, what the resistance might be, or like, I don't know the answer. That's why and so I can't even get started trying to figure out the answer, because I'm just kind of upset that I don't know the answer. So just really looking at what's underneath can be just so illuminating and helpful. But also, time blindness is a real thing, and I don't think it just happens for people with ADHD.
Yeah,
maybe that's a thing I've told myself before I knew I had ADHD. I still run into this idea that I triple book myself on a regular basis. And then I've always had to apologize for friends, I'm doing this on a constant basis. And then I figured out really, it's just me who's keeping track, and it's that old shame of I've made a mistake again around time. And so really coming at it with a lot of self-compassion, and about also, I could talk to my friends about it to say, I've done this again, and I feel a great sense of I'm so sorry to put you into this situation. That people pleasing comes, I don't want you to think I don't care about you,
Yeah.
But also that's that whole understanding just a little bit, and giving myself understanding that this is going to happen no matter what system I choose. I have to use that system, and I have time blindness. So me putting things into my system can be the part of the problem. And so, so I don't know if that connects to what you were saying, but just that idea of, let's be compassionate towards ourselves as well. When we do make mistakes, inevitably we're going to make mistakes.
Takes longer than we think.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. I think what the first thing you said, Tara, about how much of it is avoidance of feeling certain emotions. So much of what we do is shame avoidance and overwhelm avoidance. Overwhelm avoidance very much having a shame avoidance thing, because so then as I feel overwhelmed, I'm ashamed that I've overwhelmed, because it means I'm not smarter. I've done something wrong. It can really
totally.
And then that makes you more overwhelmed, and now you're in a spiral. How could I do this to myself again? You were just saying, Melissa, I just triple booked myself again. And then how a lot of this work I'm hearing for you, and I would agree for me, some of the most helpful sort of skills that I've learned and practiced is to not be afraid of my feelings.
Yeah.
And how there's practical strategies too, but a huge piece of it is, what if I don't have to be afraid when I'm overwhelmed? What if actually that's my nervous system giving me important information?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what if I can just make some space for it?
Yeah.
What if I can allow that feeling to be here and know I'm bigger than this feeling too, right? It feels overwhelming because of the whole history, past of responses and all those things. But really, this is a thought. It's a response. This is my nervous system interpreting this risk that it's assessed. Yeah. But it's not wise. I can pause and bring in the wisdom.
And I think your work on the expectation of working over our capacity is a huge factor here, because so many healthcare professionals, I think there's no room for a bad day. There's no room to be sick. There's no room to feel scattered one day and or tired and you don't do your notes. There's just such little wiggle room that things can go off the rails quick, right? So all of a sudden the notes have piled up for the week because you left early to pick up your kid, or just any fluctuating disability. It just doesn't allow for it often in the systems that we have right now. They're not that humane. So I think that's where some of the overwhelm comes too, right? Because once you feel this, the weight on your shoulders feels high, or it feels like there's too much to ever catch up on, that can also lead to paralysis, right? Overwhelm being the foot on the pedal and the brake at the same time. You're feeling oh gosh, I need to do something and I don't know what to do, right? Yeah. So some of, I just love your talks about working under your capacity, right? Because then there's that, you're not in that constant state of, I'll never catch up, or I don't know where to start, when you're not maxed out at all times.
That it's interesting because Melissa, you'd said how you kind of recognized, it used to be that I could work the way I was working because your job literally had boundaries around it that allowed you to, it created space for you because you had the summers off and you had the 4 days a week, and then that you felt within it. That's that's a rare example in healthcare for sure, right? Like, and not, I hope you don't take that in like a weird shamey way. I'm like, oh, I wish they were all like that. I think that's like so good.
I feel blessed that I had that
Yes.
all the way through. I feel like there was a lot of privilege there too, right? That I was able to not be paid over the summers, you know, that I was able to make that work with my family. And I recognize that, you know, that there's that privilege there. And boy, that made me so much healthier. It made me, you know, I had a whole bunch of boundaries that I set up. COVID kind of broke down some of them, which made the work even harder, I think, after COVID. But establishing some of these boundaries has really made it sustainable over 20 years.
Yeah, that sustainability piece. I just think like, I mean, so you've probably already heard me say this, but like, I think so many people feel like they don't fit into healthcare, or that like, especially if they have a diagnosis like ADHD or something where they have fluctuating levels of ability, they feel so much shame and stigma and like, I don't fit in, I'm never going to be good enough. And like, one of the ways to look at it is that they're right, not in the sense that like the system is set up for nobody, and it's certainly not set up for humans with fluctuating ability. So they will never be good enough for that system. But just to name, that's because the system is stupid and like and it's broken, and it's shooting itself in the foot of like, we will only accept people who work at max capacity at all times. Okay, good luck, because like
I have to say something about that. I know that when I was working 3 days, we did our program 3 days a week, for example. They got way more than 6 days out of the two of us. They probably got about 10 days out of us, you know, because we were on when we were in. You know, we did the work and the processing and the thinking. You take that home, of course you do, you know. And so you know, that part-time work, I think, benefits everybody. You know, you come with more energy, you're more focused, you're not as burned out. If we could make something happen that made that work, we would have people stay in the professions longer, be able to do the work with other responsibilities coming externally or internally, you know. It would make a world of difference. But, you know, if I may just say that one thing that triggered for me around I don't fit in this system, I think we're actually trained, this is a theory that I have, when you have to have 90s to get into the schools, it almost trains you to have to overperform in order to do this. And then that's not sustainable. And you're also not going to be getting the same kind of inputs and output, you know, that you know, oh, I got the A, you know, and when that all leaves, we've actually trained people to be unhealthy, I think. It's like,
oh my gosh.
So it starts
young,
before the actual getting into the profession.
And I think we desperately need more educators and more people in healthcare that are managing chronic medical conditions, that are managing disability, that, you know, that's really important. That helps with the shame, you know, not happening as early or as significantly for kids, you know, that then are not over hustling as they're adults. Like we need teachers that look different, that aren't just like type A organized, but that are themselves, you know, have different skills. And I think we need people in healthcare that can go, man, I've had chronic pain and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that, and have that empathy and understanding that helps validate other people's experience. We need that, right? And so how do we create a system that allows those people in there? Because that's to everyone's benefit.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Especially like, we know we need more people, because first of all, there are just more people total, which means then you also need more people in healthcare to help all the people, because everyone's a patient at some point for something, right? And there's a potential, like if you want to put it in like weird businessy terms, it's like this potential workforce that's untapped. But like in a way, like I've had a few conversations with physicians who have chronic illness or disability, and their sense of like, I still want to contribute in like, I still want to care for patients, and actually right now I cannot at all, and it's not because I don't have capacity, it's that the system won't allow me to work under my capacity, and so I've had to exit, and like that's on the system. More patients could be being seen right now. And
Yeah.
I think we can do it. Like it's a mindset shift for sure.
Yeah.
But I hope that like each time we have conversations like this, and then we each have our like sphere of influence, as you are helping folks inside and outside healthcare to feel better themselves, and then they will then have that positive impact on others. Like I just think it's beautiful work you're doing, because like that's my belief in how this changes.
Yeah.
Maybe some point someone at the top will be like, yes, and that'll be like super cool, but we don't have to like wait for that to happen.
Yeah.
Because think about
Yeah.
who gets to the top. Speaking of the people with the 107%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Absolutely.
Who we choose
know.
as leaders. Certainly, not even talking just generally politically, but like in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely.
The people, and I don't mean like I have much respect and care and know people who are at like very high levels of leadership in healthcare, but I also see how they were the superstars of the current system.
Yeah.
So it's trickier than perhaps for them and to see how, and there's a lot of pressure for them to not see how to shift it,
Yeah.
sort of to maintain
So
it,
much
even though it's
about
crumbling.
dismantling that is hard.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah. It's risky. It's
is.
scary.
It feels
right?
risky.
Yeah.
I think that
It feels.
yeah.
And
It's risky to perpetuate what's happening now. We know the risk of what's
Yeah.
happening now.
Yeah,
Right?
and I think we started thinking about this when we were working with like undergrad and grad students, thinking like this isn't fair to just ask them to tune into the process and not the outcome, when every signal is telling them that they need to focus on right.
Outcome is what matters.
And so from a young age, right? So like how like it's so we thought, okay, we need to be thinking systems level as well as individual
Yeah.
level because yeah, the downstream effect is people, professionals that are burning themselves out,
Yep.
hustling for the gold star, for like
the
the
gold star.
overachieving at all times. Yeah.
Okay. I could talk to you guys for like 50 more hours, clearly. You guys are really cool. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. I think what you've created is so beautiful. I love hearing that these, like the pilot that you ran and this ways that you're caring for people now is just an incredible work and very, very needed work for sure. So the last question I always ask, actually, no, I'll ask two questions. So first I'll ask, where can folks find you? And who could work with you if they wanted to?
Great. We can be found through our website. I think is probably the best way. Mintot.ca. Just make sure I got that right.
That's tricky.
Yeah, the two of us right now are make up Mint OT. And so that's how you can find us.
Yeah, and so so we're practicing as occupational therapists and also psychotherapists. So it's a combo of those areas, and so we're working a lot with students, with high school, university, graduate students. We're working with professionals trying to manage, ADHD, especially, and anxiety in their roles, and supporting parents. So that's our, I think, is there anyone I'm missing? I think that's our general kind of niche of who we'd really like to support.
And is it specifically people who live in Ontario or
Good question.
Guelph?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yes, mostly. I think there's a few provinces now that OTs are able to also
I
work in,
think
but
you still have to register with the colleges.
Yeah, so-
Because the
Okay.
colleges are provincial,
Yeah.
we're regulated by the College of Occupational Therapists of Ontario.
Yeah.
So yes, we can work within all of Ontario because we do both virtual as well as some in person, but we're located in Guelph. So the
Okay.
in-person has to happen here. But when we do offer workshops and things like that, we tend to do a hybrid version. So we tend to try and offer both. Yeah.
yeah.
in
And we
person.
offer walk and talk too if anyone wants to be in the forest.
Fun. Oh my gosh, I love a walk and talk. That is so great. Okay, and so then the last question I always ask is picturing those that are listening, folks like ourselves working in healthcare, and maybe specifically in this case, folks that either already know that they have ADHD or have some suspicions that they have ADHD flavors to their brain. They've resonated with what we've talked about and they're feeling that overwhelm. They're feeling burnt out. They're struggling to understand how their humanity could fit inside of healthcare. Mm-hmm. What words of wisdom or advice would you want to offer them?
I think that you listen to some of the podcasts that you've done around that validation that it's not always a humane system. And so when the self-blame starts to happen, recognize that a lot of this is not personal. This is about working within a system. And so can I find some fellow humans who I can have these conversations with and get some support around how do I intentionally interact with this system that maybe is unhealthy? How do I decide what is it I can do and what is it I can't do, and how do I get support to not do those things? So I think it doesn't happen in isolation. I think it does have to happen in community, because there's messages that are too strong to do it in isolation.
Yeah, and you are not your admin capacity. You're not you are not defined. Your ability to stay on top of your notes does not make you a good or bad healthcare human, that you got into this because of the skills you have, the client care, your passion to help people. And so that moment of self-compassion to know that it's a really, it's a hard system we're in, and sometimes there's a mismatch between our skills and what we're being asked. And seek some support to help break it down and address the overwhelm, so you can kind of take back your
humanity.
And into what part, the parts you love about the work. And
so good. Actually, one final question. What kind of tea are you both drinking right now?
Oh, good question.
So right now I have a lemon ginger, but if I may tell a really quick story about...
Please.
So for our groups that we were doing at the university, we started to bring tea just to start to create that lovely space. And both of us have gardens. We had mint in our garden, so we were making mint tea for our students. It seemed like a neutral kind of everybody could have it kind of thing. And so then our students started to say, I've bought some mint tea, and I'm doing it at home
whenever
now.
I study,
I have tea. So it became this lovely cue of care and compassion, right? And so as we left that role and moved into our private work, we had tons of names to choose from. And it was really hard to choose a good name, as you can imagine. And we came to Mint OT as just where our roots are in creating that community, that loving, compassionate feeling, as well as those students who gave us so much. So that's my story about
Oh, such a good story. I love it.
Big tea people.
Did you also have lemon ginger?
I do, yeah, because I felt like I didn't need more caffeine yet today, but I had a Earl Grey to start the day. Yeah.
Earl Grey was my favorite. Yeah. And then I had to say goodbye to caffeine totally.
Okay. I try to have to limit it. There's a balance between wakes me up and gets me jittery.
Yes, totally. Well, thank you so much to both of you. Thank you for all the wonderful work you do and for being the humans that you are. I hope everyone listening took so much from this conversation. I know I definitely did. So definitely make sure to check them out at mintot.ca. And I'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you so much. And thanks for what you do. I'm so excited to see the work you're doing. It's just the system needs to be disrupted. I'm so glad you're there doing it. So
yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
I would love to take this work deeper with you. Visit joanchanmd.com today and discover my growing menu of options for restorative medical education to suit your learning needs. I offer one-on-one coaching, customized workshops, and self-study courses that allow you to connect not only with my work on a deeper level, but also with other healthcare humans just like you. So if you want to start humanizing your work in healthcare to a deeper level and do it in community with others, please visit joanchanmd.com and find those options and what fits you and your life today.